So I want to review the film Alone Together, starring Katie Holmes. And I was happy to see this film in theaters because I was trying to look at some romance films and also like some COVID films. So there's a lot of people who did not like this film, and there's a lot of talk that I want to give you guys about what I liked and didn't like about this film. So this film stars like Katie Holmes, and what happens is she plays this character named June who books an Airbnb. And what happens is that she and her boyfriend are going to from New York City to Poughkeepsie, New York. And what happens is that her boyfriend's like, I'm just gonna stay behind. She goes by herself, and then it's booked by this guy named Charlie as well. So like the issue is that it was like double booked. So she kind of gets like really bratty and upset. And then what happens is Charles like, okay, well, you came a long way. So even though I got an email and confirmation that says like I booked it before you did, he lets her stay. And what happens is that over time they form a relationship with each other because June and her boyfriend, she kind of gets a text message from one of her friends saying that it looks like her boyfriend's cheating on her. And also another thing is that she just like tells him that we need a break. And it's kind of also revealed that he's very like an undermining person. So he just says like we need a break. And what happens is that during the break period, before she even announces, like, she does have sex with Charlie, but there's also a lot of other things that happen. Like they do kind of like like kind of just connect a little bit more. And she likes Charlie a lot because he seems to be more adventurous. He does kind of come off as somebody who wants to have fun. Her boyfriend is very analytical and just like, okay, well, like you're making a stupid choice, or you want to be a journalist, and journalist is a waste of time unless you're doing like cookbooks or whatever. So just that type of like undermining, or like when there's like an idea or something that she wants to do that he doesn't agree with, he's kind of like, well, that's stupid. This is the right way of doing things. And sometimes we have that type of relationship with people where they know better for us, but we don't want to hear it always. And sometimes they may say this is better for you, but your original idea is stupid. So there's always a sense of just undermining. And the other thing that I want to talk about is the movie itself, about what was good and what was bad. That I felt like in the beginning of the film, June's character was saying way too many lines. Like there are times when she kind of like she does a lot of just excessive body language, I feel, even like with like eye twitches and whatever. Like sometimes you don't always need that when you're acting, because it just feels a little too fake if you're always doing that, and a little too forceful. Like sometimes, like in the editing room, you have to cut that down, or the director has to say, you have to just do it a little bit less, because it just feels inorganic. And sometimes, like I was saying about like Firestarter, that sometimes when a character speaks, you have to know when to kind of cut them off in the editing room, because sometimes they may have too much dialogue, or they may have just way too much dialogue, so it feels a little too wordy. Or it feels like, like when somebody like screams, like, or when somebody gets surprised, you need to show them getting surprised, but you don't need to have them say, oh my God, or wow, you surprised me, because it feels a little excessive and a little annoying. I think the other thing that I didn't like is that her character didn't do a good job in the movie. Like, obviously she felt for her grandfather passing away, but there was another scene where she says that her father shot her mother in the head, and then her mother was murdered by her father, and her father then killed himself. So obviously when somebody is saying that, you would have a little bit more of a reaction, because that is a very traumatic experience. There's some things in my life about my biological family or my adopted parents that have hurt me. So I think if I was to be on screen, you would have to put a little bit more emotion and vigor in that, because if not, then it's just like, well, oh, my father shot my mother in the head and shot himself in the head. You have to have more emotion than that. And And I also kind of felt like in a lot of parts of the scene, I mean, the ending kind of dragged. I felt like after her boyfriend came, and then she was kind of like, you know what, she doesn't have a relationship with Charlie. What happens is that it kind of felt like it was just way too long of a. It felt way too long, and I felt really unengaged. It felt like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Like it felt like an epilogue that I just wanted to end sooner than later. And then also, I kind of think that, you know, there's a lot of things that but I think there's a lot of things I like about the film. I think the beginning, and just realizing Katie Holmes is not that great of an actress, really hurt the beginning of the film. And then the ending kind of feeling like an epilogue, even though like it was trying to show like she gets time to think about who she wants to end up with. The middle of the film, I think, was really, really strong. I think her relationship with Charlie was really good, and the actor playing him did a really great job. And I think that it really kind of showed that, you know, what type of relationship she wants. She wants to be around a person who's fun, doesn't take life too seriously, and not that type of, well, you know what, well, this is stupid, or your career decision is stupid, this is what's best for you type of person. Because sometimes, even though it's going to help us long term, we don't want to hear undermining. You know, like, for example, like, you know, I don't really save money a lot, but I remember as a kid, my parents would say things like, don't waste your money on fucking shit, or like, you know, you're always wasting money on bullshit, or that's a stupid reason to buy this or that. So always that like harsh undermining. Even though her boyfriend was not like that verbally abusive, people just don't want to hear it. But I do think that it was kind of a good film with a lot of kind of like flaws in it. I do think that it is kind of like, you know, it's trying to be feel good, but also present COVID in a certain light. And one of the lights is that, you know, it changed everything for people. People examine their lives differently, and sometimes one of the things that changes relationships. Like, obviously, people at home more are going to have a lot more sex. Obviously, if you have to be home with people that you don't know, like, let's say if you know, you live in a college dorm, you're going to see these people long term because you're under lockdown. So sometimes relationships happen that you never thought would happen. Sometimes you think about your mortality and you're like, you know what, well, I don't feel happy with my life or the person that I'm with. I need to kind of go somewhere else. So you know, like, sometimes, you know, it takes great adversities for human beings to reflect upon their lives, and that's kind of what happens within this movie. I would also kind of say that I think that, you know, there's another thing I didn't like, is that there's a random scene where you see people take pots and pans out of their homes in New York City and start banging them. And it's kind of like, you know, I hate that in movies, because it's like, why are you including something like that? Was there a parade for healthcare workers or whatever? You don't just randomly do that. There's also like another thing that I didn't like about the film. Like, it's an example of overacting or over dialogue. Like, she gives money to a homeless person, and then the guy's just rude to her. You know, and you could have just showed him being rude to her, but he did say something like, you know, the world's gonna be, you know, like he sounds like a stereotypical California surfer. You know, the world's gonna be ending soon. You need to start giving money, you ungrateful bitch. And he kicks like the ground or whatever, kicks dirt or whatever. You know, he didn't need to do that. You need to kind of just say, you know, you probably should just said, should have kicked the dirt or said, you know, you're a bitch or whatever. By the way, you're a bitch or whatever. You don't need to kind of have the extra stuff, because it feels too, like I said before, it just feels like there's too many words. And when you do that to an actor, it kind of feels like they're making an attempt. They're not actually doing a good performance. I do think that the cinematography was really, really strong. They showed New York City very, very well. I do think that, you know, once again, you know, I think the issue was that maybe Katie Holmes doesn't have a lot of writing experience, directing experience, and producing experience. So obviously, you know, this does feel like, you know, a college feature film. This feels like something like, you know, a feature film presented at a prestigious university. It doesn't feel like this is ever going to win any Oscars unless, you know, Katie Holmes just gets it because of politics. But otherwise, you know, I think that her bad acting brought down the film. Very bad editing that just didn't know how to cut out extra lines, and then also just featuring like randomness, like people just randomly getting pots and pans and banging it like outside of like their New York City apartments with no reason or cause. But I do think that while it does talk about COVID and people losing people, I think that Katie Holmes' character, she comes off as somebody who's bratty and not happy in her relationship, and somebody that has the maturity level of an immature 20-year-old, versus somebody who has deep family issues, deep boyfriend issues, and other things like that. If they focus more on her past and how she developed into that type of character, and whatever, I think that would have been a stronger film. Like, how does a person with trauma or with like a bad backstory find love in a world that is re-traumatizing? If they kind of had that more as a theme, it would have been a stronger film. But that's all I have to say about Alone Together. I liked the film, but it wasn't well made.